When I'm thinking about organizational work in organizations, when we talk about leaders, I am saying empathy is actually leadership intelligence. And so leaders are navigating uncertainty, burnout, their change fatigue, anxiety. And with all of that, people want to feel seen, heard, valued, appreciated, and respected. And right now, mostly understood. Technology is not understanding people. And so AI can provide information. However, leaders must provide understanding. If an organization is just focused on advancing their technology and just moving further into the future, let's see who can get there the fastest with that level of investment. If they don't equally invest in that same level of effort and or resources into people, they are going to fall behind because the human transformation is just as important as the technology.
The greatest threat to democracy in 2024 was disinformation. And that 95% of the elections that took place globally were impacted by disinformation.
We have young kids who are engaging in conversations with these AI chatbots and falling in love with them or becoming best friends with them is because they don't know where the line is between real and fake.
Every single technology that I could think about moves us deeper into our isolated selves and out of our communities.
We're going back to the moon, we're pushing towards Mars, we're sending people for science, for exploration, and the impact that these environments can have on our sexual health are so understudied.
Every major innovation has forced us to redefine what it means to be human. The more advanced technology becomes, the more valuable human capacity becomes.
Frankenstein, Ex Machina, HAL 2001. These are classic stories in the collective psyche of our species, and now we are living through this story. It's not to say we've already built Frankenstein. It's to say that no one knows if it is. That is the truth.
Welcome to a new season of Purposeful Empathy, a show dedicated to amplifying the voices of people from across the globe who understand the world needs more empathy and are doing something about it. This season, we're exploring empathy in the era of AI.
Together with my expert guests, we dive into the impact of artificial intelligence on democracy, human sexuality, our attention, consciousness, and so much more.
You don't want to miss a single episode, so hit that subscribe button now. And if you like what you hear, post a comment and share the show.
Hey there. Man, is there ever a lot of noise about AI right now, right? Warnings, predictions, promises. And I don't know about you, but I find it hard to make sense of it all. Now, I've spent the past 15 years studying empathy, and I think what I want to know most is how will AI impact how we treat and relate to one another? So I decided to speak with a variety of AI experts, and the result is this 25-part series exploring how artificial intelligence will reshape our society and relationships. Now, there's a ton at stake, so I do hope you'll join me on this learning journey. Today, my guest is Dr. Towanna Burrous, founder of the Institute for Coaching Innovation and author of Where AI Meets Empathy, a book that explores one of the defining leadership challenges of our time. That is, how do we embrace the power of artificial intelligence without losing our humanity in the process? In this conversation, we explore the risks of automating work faster than we develop people, the need to develop human infrastructure in the workplace, what it'll take to create organizations where people continue to find meaning and connection and human flourishing alongside intelligent machines, and why empathy is fast becoming one of the most important leadership skills in the age of AI. So look, if you want to understand how leaders can harness AI without sacrificing the very qualities that make us human, this show is for you. So you're the founder and president of the Institute for Coaching Innovation, the world's first ICF accredited coaching institution focused on culturally responsive and human-centered leadership development. You've trained more than 3,500 coaches globally. You've just written a book exploring the intersection of AI, empathy, and the future of leadership. I promise we'll get into all of that. But before we do, I'm wondering if you might like to share a little something about you so that listeners and viewers could get to know you besides the bio, and also what led you to be passionate about the work that you're doing today.
It's interesting because I started out as a chemist and a mathematician. So problem solving has always been a part of who I am. I'm trained to be a problem solver. So research then became the second phase of life, researching, to dive deeper into what's happening in society. And I can tell you that as I transitioned professionally, as I grew professionally, I fell deeply in love with professional growth and development, like learning design, helping people become their best selves, etc. And so in the early 2000s, it was a big deal for me to continue to say, okay, where's the untapped talent? How can I assist people with helping to become a bit more visible? Because, when you're at the bench, your peers, and peers talk amongst themselves, and then there's someone who'll get promoted and the others get left back. And so you get that enough times, you get to a level and you assume some power, and you're like, I want to do my part to ensure untapped talent is recognized. And so what brings me to this work is this idea of always looking at leadership through the lens of the untapped space, looking through the crowd to try to find the talent that is, very introverted, soft-spoken, but extremely powerful if given the right tools, if given the right microphone, if given the right support structure, or the right resources. And so that's where my career made the turn. And then I decided to branch out on my own and continue to do that work. And then it takes me all the way into the coaching space because I found out that coaching was the one skill that, if done correctly, could bring together a lot of thought leadership that is often going in one ear and out the other as soon as training is over. It is, in my opinion, the part that keeps it, within the brain where application and practice meet. So there's education in that practice and the reflection. And so that's why I picked up on the coaching side of the house.
Beautiful. And I came across your work as a result of your recent book. So you've recently published a book called Where AI Meets Empathy. So of course that caught my attention. And I want to read from the book description if you'll indulge. Quote, AI is no longer theoretical, it's operational. It drafts your documents, it optimizes supply chains, schedules high-level meetings, and processes data at unimaginable speed. Yet, for all its power, it leaves the organization's internal world untouched. Leaders are equipped with sophisticated tools, but increasingly struggle with the fundamental demands of clarity, compassion, and courage. And this is the central paradox of our time. The very efficiency that drives success simultaneously creates a widening empathy gap in the workforce. I find that so compelling. So my sense is you believe the greatest risk of AI is that we're losing our essential humanity in the pursuit of automation. I just want you to tell me more about that.
Yeah, well, first I gotta say that I am optimistic about technology or AI. I know we keep saying AI, but we know that AI is something that is the new trending word, but AI has been around for decades. People are just a little set back in how long ago from the beginning of the GPS system that we used to map out going from one system to another. But we know that this type of technology is around for a long time. So I am completely optimistic about AI. The challenge is not technology. The challenge is how humans respond to that technology. Throughout history, as you know, every major innovation has forced us to redefine what it means to be human. From the beginning of time, as we've documented until now, AI is asking us, even now, in my opinion, what does it mean to be human? As it pushes to be, in some ways, human itself. So knowing that the more advanced technology becomes, the more valuable human capacity becomes. And I think that we, including you, know this best, that we fall short a lot of times when we talk about human capacity. We don't consider ourselves too often sometimes when we're competing in the tech space. But empathy, discernment, as well as reflection, I think it's one more, courage and connection, I think I mentioned in the book, become more important. These are all your buzzwords, being the specialist that you are. And so the goal is not to slow innovation at all. The goal is to ensure humanity is involved alongside of the growth of technology. And so the greatest risk isn't um, becoming more human. It's becoming with technology is are we becoming less human? In this process of being so centered on the technology that we lose ourselves in it.
So I just wonder, as a follow-up question to that, and maybe I'll put you on the spot a little bit here. If you're coaching leaders, can you give me an example of what they're rubbing up against, where this automation and human connection is sort of at odds?
Yeah, so the integration, a lot of this technology is happening, let's say in performance evaluation as an example. The fastest way to move people into markers, automating the marker system, and it will rate or assess someone's performance. Our position is to sometimes accept the data as it's presented to us. And that data could be read based on what it knows about Anita. So, Anita, your performance has been evaluated. It's my responsibility to accept the data that comes my way. Now, if I am not the human that is, if I am choosing to be the human that is involved in trusting the AI over anything, then I am not going to read through the reasons why you are performing at a particular rating that's lower than normal. I wouldn't have had a conversation with you. I would just take the data as is. And in the book, I speak about different examples. And one of them is this trusting it as it's stated versus having a conversation with you, Anita, or knowing a previous conversations that we had and insert that information that was given to me into the data to allow for that comparison and understanding, and then a disruption to correct the data. So that's what we're talking about as one of the most simplest things going on with clients right now.
And you think empathy in particular, I mean, it's in the title of your book, is becoming one of the most important leadership skills of the future. So why the emphasis on empathy?
And so empathy, as you know, I'm going to keep saying this, Anita, because this is, all due respect, I have to bow down to people who study empathy as their area of expertise. But I say this because empathy, as you know, is often misunderstood as being just area of kindness. Just be kind, you know? But empathy, in my opinion, and you please correct me if you think I need to be corrected, is actually leadership intelligence. So when I'm thinking about organizational work, now I'm not talking about being out in community. I'm saying just in organizations, when we talk about leaders, I am saying empathy is actually leadership intelligence. And so leaders are navigating uncertainty, burnout, their change fatigue, as you know, anxiety. And with all of that, people want to feel seen, heard, valued, appreciated, and respected. And right now, mostly understood. Technology is not understanding people. And so AI can provide information. However, leaders must provide understanding. So in my example a minute ago, when I was talking about how it's being used, it takes the leader's understanding of the employee to intersect and disrupt the data to get clarity so that it could be, so the employee can feel more seen and understood. So empathy helps leaders recognize what people are carrying beneath the surface, and it's the things that people cannot see that really matters most. A lot of times, things that we don't speak about that affect our performance. And so empathy strengthens trust and engagement, and performance. And so without it, leaders are just relying on now these tools, very disconnected, very independent of everything. And so without giving the same attention to this technology, if an organization is just focused on advancing their technology and just moving further into the future and moving into this age of, the race, rather, let's see who can get there the fastest. With that level of investment, if they don't equally invest in that same level of effort and or resources into people, they are going to fall behind, because the human transformation is just as important as the technology. And so that's where I stand.
So, okay, I'm listening to you speak and I'm thinking that who are the viewers and the listeners of this particular episode going to be? I'm imagining people in HR, supervisors of teams, managers, leaders, looking for strategies to support their team well-being and flourishing in the face of this AI revolution. And so when you say, I mean, I know what you're talking about, but let's just make it really simple for everybody else. When you're talking about people feeling seen and people feeling heard, what does that actually mean? Like in the day-to-day activities of a workplace?
Yeah. So that means that if we're on a team together, the two of us, and we have two other team members, you and I could be extremely extroverted and we could be very vocal. In fact, either one of us could be a lead on the team. But let's say we have two other team leaders who are not as active, but we know that they're brilliant, and they can contribute just as much. They would position themselves to be seen in a different way than you and I would. We are seen through an external, high energy, talkative. Someone else is doing it more reserved, withheld, and maybe the power of the pen. Maybe they have other ways that they will demonstrate their level of effort and involvement and excitement that is not translated the same way. The leader of our team would have to, in my opinion, in these days and time, be aware that everybody on this team needs an opportunity to be understood, that we all don't communicate. We all have different personalities. We all have different lived experiences, and we will all approach problem solving and innovation and team building and collective relationships differently. And it's my job as a leader to know the differences about everyone on my team, so that we function as a collective for the purpose of innovation and creativity in some cases.
Okay, so let's make the business case for taking the time to do that, because everybody's under pressure to perform. The KPIs, the world is changing so fast, so we just have to barely keep up. And then, people are generally stretched thin anyways by sort of what's going on in the world, mortgage payments, interest rates, gas prices, geopolitics, the whole kit and caboodle. So I'd love to hear from you as a coach that also trains coaches, why you believe the ROI is absolutely there to spend time as a leader, to get to know your different employees and meet them where they're at, see them for who they are, appreciate them for who they are, and that will net us all the other KPIs in the long run.
Because the cost of grief, the cost of loss, and the people leaving is far more expensive than them staying, replacing them. So truthfully, you end up bleeding more money when someone is unhappy, because there's leave, there's disconnection, there's loss of accuracy. So that their absence mentally and physically costs a lot more money than you investing the time. Now, why I say to the leaders that we work with in our company, primarily, time is a commodity. We know it. Time is so important. It's so precious that we must give you skills on how to maximize on time, so that you can give attention to these members, so that you can reduce the leave or increase retention. But the case is, you're on the winning side of the organization. The organization has made an investment in these people. Every one of them must have a return on that investment. As the leader of that team, it is your responsibility to ensure. It is their responsibility to ensure that the organizations are getting return on that investment by investing in the individuals that are on your team. The only way to do that is to know them, to understand them, to speak with them, to spend time with them. And if time is a commodity, then you must look at ways to be more efficient. And that's just the bottom line to it.
Beautiful. Now, you describe coaching as part of the human infrastructure that organizations need in the age of AI. I find that really interesting, human infrastructure. Can you explain what you mean by that and what happens when organizations invest in technology faster than they invest in people?
Yeah, every organization invests in technology infrastructure. So think about it this way. Okay, when we talk about infrastructure, technical infrastructure, we talk about machines, we talk about desktops, we talk about all the things that feed into a desktop, we talk about the data server room. But now let's flip that and put it into the structure of a human being. And so we're saying few invest equally in a human infrastructure, me and you. Less of that is happening. And when we speak about it, we're talking about trust, communication, psychological safety, emotional intelligence, ethical decision making. So I use an example we just spoke about. As a leader, my core responsibilities is to ensure that the people on my team feel seen, heard, valued, respected, and understood, as we spoke about. And the way we do that is to invest in that human infrastructure. And so I came up with that idea to inserting in the book, saying, okay, you have technical infrastructure. Well, now we have human infrastructure. And if I make it just as important as the technology, maybe you understand the need and also put a price tag on it in the same way you invested in the price of AI, which is extremely expensive. If you get it wrong, you're going to pay 6 times the amount to get it right. So these are invisible systems. So when we talk about human infrastructure, we're talking about the invisible system of the human that we are thriving to change, right? We are not necessarily visible, but as leaders, we must work to make us very visible, make your employees very visible. And that's where coaching helps. Coaching helps strengthen that system, that human infrastructure system. So AI can help optimize it, but coaching helps people navigate through the changes that happen. So AI can serve in one corner of it, but coaching takes the rest of it to help the human grow and professional growth and development.
Well, even just following your metaphor that if we invest in technical infrastructure, why wouldn't we invest in human infrastructure? Makes me think that coaching is really like a systems upgrade. Like,
Right.
yeah.
Exactly. Human
Um,
infrastructure determines whether people can actually move with the technology. So you can invest a lot in one corner and nothing in the human infrastructure side, and you're going to just have a very expensive, shiny toy.
and it makes me think of, I'm trying to remember this gentleman's name. Maybe you'll think of it first. He talks about adaptive leadership and the idea that nobody likes change, right? There's always a resistance to change, but the good leadership, like adaptive leadership, makes the case to people who are going to be faced with the implications of the change to recognize not what they're going to lose in the change, but what they're going to gain or how they're going to benefit somehow.
Right.
And I feel like that's also part of the I don't know, a strength of a leader is to make that case to a team, to the employees that are going navigating well, a change like AI for sure, but any change.
Right. Exactly. And we've seen this before. I think the right today it's the AI, or for the next, who knows how many decades in the future it's going to be. That's what we're talking about. But you being a student of this work for so long, you know that we are just relabeling a lot of things again and again. And where we stand in this moment and why empathy is so important is because we want to make sure we're keeping humans in the loop. If you allow for this technology to take over, there's the disconnect, and more people are going to find themselves more isolated and more disconnected, and they're going to lose their desire for a lot of different things, and that's a big fear.
Okay, so without naming names, obviously, I wonder whether or not you could share an anecdote about working with a client who experienced the loss of all of that, the loss of belonging, the loss of engagement, the loss of mental health in the workplace as a result of sort of like this, I don't know, this a culture that is becoming less about the people working within the organization, but more about just the efficiencies that can get done and how to get the product out or how to, I don't know, whatever XYZ problem.
Yeah. Give you an example of when that we've seen that. Oh yeah, you pick a any given day in almost any industry with these clients of mine. Some of them have been fantastic in getting through that season and taking that big turn. Others will find themselves right back in it again because why? Revenue is suffering. So let's look at it this way. We know that we have to be profitable at the sacrifice sometimes of other things. So where do we start cutting budget? Training and education, gone. So we start moving things that we believe are not as important. And then that's when we have that gap. And as soon as you remove that level of training and education or that resource to support the leadership or support your employees, that gap is going to create, we're talking several years of loss when it comes to leadership and being ready for the next big thing. So in, COVID, let's just use that for a second. We know what happened in COVID. We know how many organizations lost money because they had a remote workforce. Soon as we return to work, there's that big gap where everybody had to make up in revenue for the time lost because it was a very expensive shift. All right, but they couldn't invest in the people because they didn't have the dollars. So they had to wait several years before that money showed up again. Right? So we're recovering now still from COVID. And here it is, 6 years. And right now, some of our clients have been working at this slowly for the last 6 years, like let's say 4 years, last 4 years working at this slowly and finally in a good spot. But I can tell you that those who are not working on it slowly until they got more revenue or just abandoned it altogether, they're paying a major price right now trying to afford the growth that is actually happening because money's flowing. If people don't know that your household may not be getting the money, but money is falling out of the corners of the walls in some of these organizations. And they're making so much money. Now they can afford to fill the gap. And now the resources are coming. People are being trained. Leaderships need to be ready. And now they're scaling, scaling, scaling. And now training and education is back on top.
But it's kind of like the idea that comes to mind about the reflex to pull money from training and development of your talent is kind of like the way you would feed your body. It's like if you choose to take away like the good quality protein and the good quality grains and nuts and seeds and vegetables and fruits, and then you just expect the body to carry on without those important core ingredients, then like really, I mean, we're an organism after all, right?
That's right. And it's just like, let's use exactly what you were saying. For instance, right now, everybody was talking about protein, protein, protein. Nobody was talking about fiber.
Right, right.
Okay. So
Yeah,
it's like, okay, hey, knock on the door. Your gastrologist is going to tell you where's your fiber.
yeah.
Someone's going to warn you about the fact that you've ignored this thing and now you're at a crossroads to have to fix a crisis or you're headed towards a crisis. Same applies, right? So what we're doing in our work that we do at our company and the work that you do is remind these leaders as much as we can to, write books, have podcasts, and do whatever we can to say, hey, don't forget the human infrastructure. As you're moving with technology, let's do this part too. And you can afford it. Even if it's a little investment, increase it over time, but don't forget the human infrastructure because they must be ready for the big game because the big game is coming. And if you're not practicing before a game day, you're just going to fumble and it's going to cost you much more.
Right. So developing the social capital and the human infrastructure in order to be a successful business, that's a very compelling case. So I want to maybe talk more broadly than just at the organizational level, right? You've spent years studying coaching and leadership and human development. And right now we're like at the precipice, if we're not even maybe a little bit tipped into it already, of AI replacing potentially millions of jobs. We don't know. The numbers are always different, depending on who you're talking to. But I wonder at sort of at a more macro level, what concerns you about the future if we continue advancing technology without also advancing emotional intelligence, cultural awareness, human meaning, contribution, connection, all that, like the human stuff, the things that make us human, you alluded to that at the beginning. What's going to happen to society more broadly in your mind?
You hit all the good points, right? Anita, this is so this is why everyone who's listening to you, and that's why they follow you, because you're such a wonderful and informed host. You're not just someone who knows the subject briefly. This is your thing, right? So I have a lot of respect for you. So my concern is not the AI itself, just like you mentioned. Of course not. My concern is the values embedded in the AI. AI learns from historical behavior, as you know. A lot of people don't see that. People are thinking like, okay, no, it's just, learning off of what we do. No, no, no. Look at Grok. What is Grok learning? Grok is learning. We've seen it spit out different things. So human history includes bias, exclusion, and inequity. So we're training the tools. Okay. So without emotional intelligence and cultural awareness, not or, and cultural awareness, we here's a tongue twister. We risk, we are risking those problems, okay, of the scaling of those problems, it getting worse. So we cannot outsource ethical judgment. We cannot outsource wisdom. We need that from the human. And so that human discernment is the most important, or must remain central to everything that is designed and developed moving forward. That's why I have a lot of respect for Anthropic. I'm not trying to name companies. I have no sponsorship, no ads. This is not my love child, but I'm just mentioning people who are staying in this space of their value system. Human infrastructure, when we talk about it, the idea is like, what are your core values? What do you stand for? If you're an entrepreneur and you own a business, your values are wrapped in the company you build. These large companies, again, wrapped in the mission statements and vision statements, etc. And the leaders of those companies, the CEOs, they have a vision, they have values, and everybody aspires or they agree to them. So my only point is that technology can't scale intelligence. It cannot automatically scale wisdom either. So knowing that, we must exist. So that's my biggest concern.
Right. And I wonder if you could speak to how leaders can create cultures. Okay, so we've talked about the importance of people feeling seen and valued and feeling like, they belong. In your book, you actually outline how to integrate AI ethically and deliberately through a framework that empowers leaders to move beyond basic efficiency to foster that human discernment and human flourishing. So I wonder if we could actually like unpack the framework that you've proposed to give leaders like real tangible strategies.
Yeah, so culture is not created through technology. Let's take that out of the room altogether. Culture is created through human interaction. So inside an organization, humans are interacting and creating culture. People want respect, belonging, trust, and meaningful contribution. That's like if you did a survey or assessment, those are going to be like your top four in some variation. Okay. Leaders will create human-centered cultures by doing what? Okay, this is where the notes need to come out. So take notes, leaders that are listening. Listening deeply, creating psychological safety, encouraging reflection, and investing in coaching and development, or whatever works for your organization. We say coaching because that's what we love, because we think it works. But that investment in an opportunity for people to feel that they can speak to someone in confidence. Okay, so AI can provide insights, but leaders must create meaning. So that is your role. We can't escape. You can escape it, and then there'll be negative results. But empathy slows us down long enough for us to ask deep questions, right? So I'm asking. So when it comes to culture, it's like, okay, just think. It's not empathy is not one of those weird words. It just means take a minute, pause, ask deeper questions about what is or what is not being impacted right now, whose voice is being heard or not heard. It's just pausing. And then when you add the coach approach to empathy, you're saying, and ask better questions while you're listening so that you can learn more from them. And instead of inserting yourself, listening to what they say.
Right. And yeah, I remember understanding coaching as different from consulting, and certainly different from like therapy or counseling, as asking powerful questions that allows people to sort of figure out for themselves what makes sense and how they can move forward intelligently. I want to do a little deep dive on all of those different elements that you mentioned. So I believe, this is based on memory right now, that you talked about listening. You had a special qualifier for the listening. What was it? Active listening or
Yes, it's
active listening?
and that, yes. Intuitive listening too. Don't we also listen intuitive, especially for those who are quiet on our team. Sometimes it's the things that are not said that you need to pick up on, like directly. I don't say directly what's wrong with me, but intuitively, I can be curious enough to ask you, Anita, it seems to me that you may have some additional thoughts to add. Is that true? You know, that's your curiosity. And Anita has an opportunity right there to say, actually, I do. Thank you for asking.
Not to mention some humility too, to make sure that you don't actually assume you know the answer, or from your own lived perspective, like project.
Yes, the best leaders in the room, you don't have to be right. You just need to be curious. The best thing to do is to submit to everyone that's on your team. It's not about being right. It's about making sure the people on your team understand that I humbly submit that I don't need to have all the answers. Which one of you have the answers? I respect the knowledge base that I have on this team. So therefore I submit. Tell me where I'm in error. Get me read in, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so that's on the listening. I love that. What was the second one?
Creating psychological safety
Okay. I think we all
or
know, but
trust. Just say trust.
trust. Okay, let's talk more about that. How do you build cultures of trust and psychological safety?
Yeah. So when the best way that or the simplest way is to be a person of your word. That's the first thing. When you say you're going to do a thing, do it. That's the first step towards establishing a trust space, right? So be a person of your word, be a person of integrity. Now, we know that everyone doesn't use integrity as their high core value, but other people are watching your leadership. They want to mirror some of your leadership approaches. And so being a person who stands behind their word is the first way. If you said you're going to, give someone an opportunity, give them that opportunity. If you said you're going to make time for someone, make time. So every time you say you're going to do something, that's the commitment. You do everything you can to honor that. That way people believe you, and the belief in those words establishes, oh yeah, he meant what he said. He's a man of his word. That's where it comes from.
Right. And okay, so that's a great way to develop trust. I think there's probably more to say about psychological safety.
That's a lot more.
Yeah, okay, let's dig into it. I'm all ears.
Okay, so psychological safety, there's a level of understanding that would allow someone to say, okay, if I'm going to participate in this team environment, I must also do something. as the employee or the team member. I can't put it all on the leader. So I need to, one, ensure that I'm doing all the things as far as my responsibilities. I can't fall short of my own responsibilities. Okay, so that's the first rule. So I don't want people to think, why is it always on the leader to do it all? No, it's not. So it's a win-win for everyone. Everybody contributes. Okay, so I am committed as an employee to do my part. And I'm also accountable for everything that I do. So if I'm wrong, I admit that I'm wrong. If I don't know, I do whatever I can to state I don't know. I need additional support. As a leader, as I'm listening to my team members, if I've established trust, it is easy for me to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I need additional support. Now, when I say that, I'm not doing it because I'm establishing a codependent relationship and I need you to always tell me what to do. I'm saying it because I'm needing support because this one's challenging, never done it before. So psychological safety is also making sure that I am contributing at all times as a leader to ensure that you feel seen, heard, respected, and valued and appreciated in everything that we do together, and that we meet in the middle so that you feel that you can come to me and speak to me, and that you don't feel that there's some punishment, or that I'm going to call you stupid or have an expectation that is too high for me to meet. That there is a happy median, and then we accept that you can excel and I can meet you at your next level. If I have an expectation of growth, then I'm going to surround you with the things that you need in order for that to happen. And that's summarizing without going into the steps that you can't memorize in this moment anyway, because we're not in class.
I feel like one of the core elements that you're describing, though, is that a leader needs to show up with a degree of vulnerability.
Yep.
To be like human and to model that, and then to allow other people to show up. I mean, I'm conjuring up Brene Brown's work around shame and vulnerability and courage in the workplace. So the idea is to be as human as a leader as possible that would
Yes.
enable other people to show up in all of their strengths and fallibilities.
Yes. And when you say vulnerable, though, to leaders, a lot of times they think, oh, I'm too soft. You want me to be soft? No, we do not. We need leaders to be strong leaders. We need leaders to be leaders. Don't stereotype this whole vulnerability thing. So, when I'm in a classroom and I'm teaching leaders and I say vulnerable, be vulnerable, they're like, they start to, like, I'm not telling you to tell all your dirty business. That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is for you to understand being vulnerable says, I am listening and I am holding space for your truth without judgment. I'm going to suspend judgment as you share with me. I'm going to suspend judgment. I can't be without judgment because that's impossible. But I'm going to suspend judgment in this moment and allow you to move forward, to grow and develop. And I'm going to give you that space. But at the same time, I'm also going to, if asked, I'm also going to share with you in areas where I have fallen short. If you ask me, the biggest mistake, leaders make is when they're trying to relate with the people on their team by being so vulnerable. They're telling their story and telling too much. There's no need for that. There is no need for relating to where you feel like you got to match storylines. In my classroom, I say connect. Just connect. Connection means you're listening actively, you are reflecting what you're hearing, you are holding space for their truth, and you're suspending judgment. That's what is the most basic you can do. And doing that allows them to feel safe. And when they walk away, you do not bring it up at the most inconvenient time and say, well, you remember when you told me XYZ, and then you throw it in my face and use it as a weapon against me. Never do you ever. So I want you to connect, and relating is just the deeper well. And there's no reason to do that now. We learned that decades ago. No. We don't need all of that matching of storylines. No, I just need you to listen again. I need you to understand what you're hearing, reflect what you're hearing, and hold space and suspend judgment while you're in that space.
Right. Okay. So we've covered the listening. We've covered the psychological safety / trust. What's the third?
Encouraging reflection. So we kind of added there. So we want leaders to create that human-centered culture by encouraging reflection. So one of the gifts that you can give someone is when you give them the opportunity to show you that they can do something. Put them in charge of something, a new project, etc. A lot of times people are really waiting for the moment. People who are set back in their personality, say they're a bit more introverted, if we want to label it that, they may need some encouragement to step in, right? So encouraging reflection would mean to admit when you sidestep left, reward the things that they've done right. But here's the part I appreciate. Always lead with what they did right first. Always name what happened that was good first. Then follow up and say, okay, let's cover all the things that you did, at top notch, or all the things that allowed you to be successful. Choosing your words. Now let's reflect on the things that need to be tweaked or changed. So encouraging reflections, even for you as a leader. So you're modeling that psychological safety means putting yourself in the middle too, saying, hey, you're not without reflecting on your own too. So you have to sometimes say, you know what, I did these things, I know, but these are the other things I have to work on. And that means sometimes how you give feedback. If you didn't do a good job with a feedback or something like that, you have to own it. Like, I did not do my best in the past with providing feedback. I'm going to work on that, or I am working on that. So encouraging reflection is a part of just that honest conversation with everyone, including yourself, that'll, again, create that safe space.
Right. And this reflection piece is not something that we necessarily make time for, but the dividends are so right, are so it compensates. If you take the time to reflect, then you can plan differently, you learn from mistakes, and I also appreciate what you said earlier about how like lead with the good stuff. I guess that goes for parenting too. Yeah. Okay, so we've covered three now. So we've got listen, we've got psychological safety, we said reflection, right?
Reflection.
And then
Investing in coaching and development, or let's just say development. So your development as a leader, invest in your own development, and making sure that the people that are reporting to you on the team also feel that you are making room for them to be developed as well. But do not take yourself off the list. Just because you get promoted and you make rank does not mean that you are in, that you don't need any more development. It's not box checking here. The people on your team can also inform you about areas that you need to grow. Are you open enough to hear the truth about who you are to them and how you show up? And having that meaningful conversation allows someone to say, hey, I would submit that you need to, do better at X, Y, or Z, and being open to that, and you taking yourself for that extra development. So it's not only just for them, it's for you too.
so I feel like, okay, if that's the framework in the book where empathy meets AI, right? You've made a very compelling case for how artificial intelligence is an important tool for leaders and managers and employees writ large. It's there for us to use and leverage to guide some efficiencies, some degrees of productivity, some analysis, X, Y, Z, okay? And that's all good. But that does not compensate for the need for all those skills that you described and keeping the workplace human and appreciating the people who are doing the work, and that the two can coexist and actually really catapult organizations to a higher level of success.
Absolutely, because the technology is helping us simplify our production, our innovation, our creativity. It's helping us simplify. But we can't get caught up in that process of simplification and ignore the fact that we can't simplify humans. We can't do that part. So we can be integrated all we want, but people don't simplify perform. We just can't do that. So it's best that we always keep that in the front of our leadership style, to make sure that we're always checking in, so you can have people in charge of almost anything. But the wave of the future is, you're going to have, if it's true, and it goes the way that they're predicting, you will have less work to do because it will be working for you. You'll be more curious, and you will have better problem solving and prompting skill sets. And, the language will shift to the technology language, which would give you more time to focus on the team members that are also doing the exact same thing on your team for those outputs. So in essence, you must invest in both the innovation and the humanity, because people don't simply perform. They have to flourish, just like you said.
So it's interesting because I'm very motivated to have these conversations in order to think about how AI is going to impact our relationships, especially our capacity to empathize. And what I'm hearing you say is that if we can work it out, AI would be a great competent tool for us to actually let us do the stuff that we're naturally good at better, where everybody gets to benefit. So that sounds kind of hopeful.
That's right. It would, and that's the way I choose to use technology, and have always used it that way. It's like it's a win-win for me in everything that I touch. I'm not going to allow the technology to move beyond me to where I cannot integrate people into that. It's just not going to happen. But then that's just me. There's some people who would prefer to just work with the technology and know people. And we're not talking about those individuals, because if that is who you choose to be, then that's fine. But there's a whole nother, world of people, leaders, who understand the need to move their companies into the future, and the need to scale and grow and continue to flourish in the future, which means everybody must go, and you must keep the human in the loop.
And without putting words in your mouth, if we do that, our capacity as leaders means that we'll become more empathic, which is exciting.
Exactly.
So, as a final question, Dr. Towanna Burrous, it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Thank you for making the time. I always end my interviews with the same question, regardless of theme or topic or subject area that we've covered, and that is, if you can think of a moment in your life when you were on the receiving end of empathy, if you could tell us about that and what it meant for you.
It's funny. I've had the privilege of, having within our company, one core area that we provide, what service area we provide, is coach training and education. So I've had the privilege of being able to be in the classroom, training people in the coaching space, and it being a safe space for me to share vulnerably some of the things that I was, going through in life, whether it was personal or professional, my challenges, my frustrations, my obstacles, and having a classrooms of wannabe coaches listening intuitively, reflectively, validating my emotions. And I can tell you, after 11 years of doing this, and now almost 4,000 students have gone through the graduation program, it has been the biggest gift to be able to say, I went through a divorce and my students heard me share. I went through my daughter graduation from college, share. Moments of my personal life, and then the moments of growth and expansion in my company. Having students who are just learning skills for the first time to suspend judgment, to hold space for me, to get, we in class, we say, extend grace. They always extend grace. Whenever I'm in the classroom teaching, because I don't teach always now, but when I'm in the class, they extend so much grace. And that's what we're looking for. We're training them to be the most powerful coaches of the world. But I get to be in that chair in that moment, and it's all given to me in those moments when I need it. And so when I'm sharing, it's the biggest gift I could ever receive, being a business owner, having that vehicle to receive so much empathy and get so much support, using the skill sets at the same time. It's something I could never pay for the amount of support that I've gotten through my own classrooms.
Yeah, and I think that's, I often get asked the question, what surprised you most about empathy when you study it? And I've looked at it from philosophy and psychology, sociology, neuroscience, the whole thing. I say it's a superpower that we have as humans, but it's a self-fulfilling, reciprocating trait that when we extend empathy, we also benefit. So you just described a story of how you on the receiving end of empathy benefited so much. And it's, I guess, maybe an easy sell then to tell leaders do more of it, because the people that are on the receiving end in your team are going to flourish, and then everybody wins.
That's right. That's right. And again, with your studies, and I'm sure it will continue to evolve, it's because of the work that you do, it's because of having experts like you in the field that keep this topic on the forefront, that we're able to, do our research and have this information, and again, to integrate it into this space. Don't stop. It's important for leaders to be able to read Purposeful Empathy, and also to understand how important to say time is a commodity. However, it's more expensive for me not to do this than it is if I did.
Amen to that. Amen to that. So, thank you for the time, Towanna. Appreciate you. I'll have information about where you can get the book, Where AI Meets Empathy, in the show notes. Want to thank everybody who was watching or listening, and we'll see you next week at Purposeful Empathy. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation or found it illuminating, I hope you'll check out the other episodes from this series devoted to empathy in the age of AI. And of course, if you know someone who would enjoy this show, I hope you'll pass it along. Before you go, please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next week.